Hey everybody, and welcome to the Home Buttons Game of the Year 2018 episode. Today, each of us are going to individually go through our top 5 games of the year. It's just that simple. So I'm going to get right into it. My number 5 game of the year is a little game called Hitman 2. I wasn't really that big into the Hitman series until I actually came on this show, and we played an episode of Hitman. It was such a beautiful fusion of stealth, humor, because the game really doesn't give a shit about if you're gonna actually pass the mission or if you're going to fail it. It's all about the kind of quirky situations that you can get yourself into, or that you can avoid, or that you can get yourself out of. And Hitman 2 kind of takes that core idea of kind of just letting you run with the tools they give you, and it expands it in new levels that are really expansive and really fun. It also includes all of the original Hitman 1 levels, which I thought was just a great thing to do. They updated all of the Hitman 1 levels with some of the new features of Hitman 2. There aren't that many new features, but who cares? It's still a really awesome thing that they did. And the game itself picks up the story. The story of Hitman 1, which wasn't that stellar, but it was still pretty interesting. It was a nice little spy movie type thing. They pick that story up, and I think they handle it really, really nicely. They don't go too crazy with it, but they continue on a nice little escalating progress of these Illuminati-level organizations fighting each other, but I won't give you more than that. Beyond that, the game's just really fun. There's so many solutions in each level that it's kind of overwhelming at first, but once you start going down a certain path, you start to realize the freedom that the game allows you. I was really blown away by each level, how many different options there were, not only to kill your 3 targets, but for each person individually that you're going after. There are so many different ways to go after that single person. Check out Hitman 2, because it's a really fun experience that definitely rewards you for taking your time and being thoughtful, but it's also a really fun time if you just like fucking around and killing people in clown outfits and stuff like that. There's a rubber ducky in the game that is explosive. What more could you ask for? My number 4 is a game that we've also played on the home button, and it's one of my personal favorite games probably ever made, and it came out this year, but it's been in development for, I think, about 12 years, since I was in high school, which was way back in 2008, 2009, up to 2012. Kenshi came out this year. It's an open-world, sandbox, squad-based RPG. It's a lot all bundled in one. It's extremely niche. The premise is you play a character of your own making in a post-apocalyptic world that's totally open to you. It's a sandbox game in the truest element, where there's no guiding elements that kind of force you down a certain path. Most of the time it just drops you in the desert, and your character might die a couple days later because it's just a harsh and unforgiving game. But it's a game that rewards you choosing your path, and it rewards failure in really interesting ways. I have a lot of time played in this game, and I haven't really gotten very far because I'm constantly making new characters and experiencing different parts of the world and trying to do different paths. One of my first games, I tried to build a house and become a trader, because you can do that. You can set up what you need to start mining things, start farming things, start creating goods. You can create shop stands at your base, and you can start to sell the stuff that you make. That's just one of the many branches that you can go down. Unfortunately, my base was destroyed by cannibals pretty early on, because that's just how the game works. But that wasn't it. I lost probably all my character's limbs. They almost bled out. A random person saved me, and I was still alive, but I was crawling on the ground with no limbs. It's a super weird game, but it's amazing. The detail that went into it, the writing that is tucked away in each unique character in the game, just slowly starts to reveal itself as you explore this mysterious post-apocalyptic world and start to develop your characters. More of the world begins to reveal itself to you in really, really natural ways, and in ways that I think are really, really, really cool. It's definitely not a game for everybody, but it's just a game that blows me away every time I start it, and new things happen to me every time I play it. And it's another game I have probably about 200 hours in. Kenshi, number 4. The third game on my list is called RimWorld. Just like Kenshi, it has been in early access for a really long time, but it finally released this year. And it is a colony survival strategy simulation storytelling game, which is, again, a lot of genres in it. And I may be butchering it a little bit, but basically you guide the development of a small colony on a rim world, which in the lore of this game is something that's really far away from the core planets where all the cool technology is. So you play, a rough and tumbling new group as you try to build them homes, farms, storage rooms, production rooms, and stuff like that. But the unique thing about RimWorld is that you can't actually control the people that you have. They all have their own skill sets, their own kind of psychological backgrounds and stuff like that, that dictates how they all interact with one another. But you can't really control any of that. Instead, your RimWorld peons basically do the jobs that you recommend to them, and they interact with each other as they do that, and they build relationships, the relationships fall apart, et cetera, and all while this is going on, there's an artificial intelligence storyteller that is driving random events that's going to happen to your colony as time goes on. So the more you play, the more stories that you are experiencing that are randomly happening in front of you based on the psychological backgrounds of the people that you have in your colony, that you rescued, that have crashed down from a ship orbiting the planet that you're on. Your people can get married, they can get divorced, they can kill each other, they can just, there's so much drama that happens in each game, and each game is completely different. I love how focused on story it is, but also just how fun it is to build things and just think of cool blueprints for how you want to design a colony. And it just scratches that perfect simulator itch that not a lot of games do. And it's one of the best rated games on Steam. So RimWorld rules, and I'm really happy it came out this year. My number 2 game is Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 1 is the first game that made me cry. It's the first game that made me look at video games as not just fun games, cool worlds to explore, but as stories that really kind of get to your core. Red Dead Redemption 2 transcends that in a lot of ways. It's just a sprawling, just incredibly detailed open world. I was, and still am, constantly overwhelmed when I play that game because there's so many different activities that you can go on that maybe don't matter, but they're so well made and they're so detailed. It's so fun to just experience the world. And the storyline in the game actually just completely blew me away. I wasn't expecting such a mature and thoughtful and almost literary story before I started playing this game. And the more that I explored Arthur Morgan's background, the main character you play in the game, and how he interacts with all of the camp members, how your actions outside in the open world affect your camp and the people that you're in camp with. But later on, the story missions are affected by the choices that you make in the open world. I think they do it in a lot of really neat and interesting ways that a lot of open world game designers haven't really done. The way that your basic interactions with townspeople, the fact that they'll remember you, the fact that they'll get mad at you based on certain things that you've done, and your camp is also reflective of that. If you're always bringing deer back to feed the camp, people will remark on it and think you're great, and the less you start to put into the camp, they'll start reacting a little bit more negatively towards you. I think that Red Dead Redemption 2 is an incredible next step in open world design. I think it's probably one of the most detailed games ever created, if not the most detailed game ever created. It's really an astounding piece of art. And it's also an incredibly entertaining experience. Everybody should play it. I think the open world aspect is not for everybody. I think the plot is one of the greatest stories ever told in video game format, hands down. It's really only beat by one other game. My game of the year 2018 is God of War. It's the number one. I played God of War 1, 2, and 3 on PS3. I didn't play them originally on PS2. And I loved them because they were fast-paced, the combat was brutal, satisfying, really skill-based. It was really difficult to button mash and get through that game. You had to know all your combos and everything. I felt the story was cool. It was lacking a little bit, specifically in, like character engagements and that kind of thing. It was very a surface-level story. And I think that the gameplay mechanics of that were much more on the nose than the storyline in the first 3 God of War games. I think they really stepped it up in the third God of War game when everything was coming together. God of War 2018 is the reboot to that series, and I was mesmerized the entire time I was playing that game. The entire game is shot through a one-camera perspective, so when you're fighting with the extremely tight combat, that is a little bit different. It's not a little bit different, it's a lot different. God of War 1 through 3 was the camera wasn't really controlled by you, it was all over the place, and it was very much a hack and slash game. They went for a more focused, over-the-shoulder, really engaging combat that still manages to be fast-paced, but feels heavier, it feels more modern in its design. They also expanded a little bit into open-world elements. God of War 1 through 3 had a lot of big areas that you could explore and secret things to find. God of War 2018 takes the open world, and it doesn't throw you in arbitrarily. It gives you a really neat narrative device through the boat and being on the boat with your son Atreus, which is another amazing aspect of this game. It gives you a way to explore the world, learn about it, and find new paths to your objectives. And then at the top of God of War is the storyline. They completely reimagined who Kratos is, who he can be, and what the players see in Kratos. It evolved into much more than just a macho man destroying the gods. Now it's still admittedly a macho man caring for his son in the wake of his wife and his mother's death, taking him on an epic journey to where she wants them to spread her ashes. It's just such a fantastic experience on every level. I can recommend God of War to everybody I know because the combat's really fun. It's pretty easy to learn, really difficult to master. The visuals are absolutely fucking outstanding, and so is the soundtrack. But then the storyline gives you a reason to push, to continue playing, to continue learning new skills, continue upgrading your character. There's just so much in God of War 2018 that you didn't expect. And it wasn't a bad not expect. It's a holy shit, this is in this game and this really works for this game. It was just an outstanding experience, and I'm really happy that I played it, and it changed the way that I look at video games. That and Red Dead Redemption 2. They're both games that are finally kind of reaching the goals that we have in mind for the story elements of our video games. We're able to experience empathy for our characters that we've never been able to really experience the way that we can now. With advancements in motion capture animation, cinematic storytelling is making its way into video games in an art form that I don't think is possible anywhere else. I think, God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2 are at the top of my list for a reason, because not only are they really fun games to play, but the stories that they're telling are very obviously crafted by people who care for their medium and people that think that it can be so much more than it is right now. So thank you for joining me with my game of the years, games with my games of the year 2018. Bye.